Hi, this is Miss Wright, and I am going to be reading from Odysseus: The Complete Adventures by D.J. Hartzell. Odysseus before the Trojan War. Approximately 3,500 years ago, a great hero named Laertes was the king of Ithaca, an island kingdom off the western coast of the Greek mainland. Laertes' wife was named Anticlea, and she bore the king a son. Shortly after the boy was born, his maternal grandfather, Autolycus, came to visit Ithaca and see his new grandson. Autolycus was known throughout the ancient world for his cunning and craftiness. He was a son of the god Hermes, the Olympic messenger and patron god of businessmen and thieves, and the god had given certain powers to him. It was said that he could alter the color and shape of animals. He could also make objects invisible by touching them with his hands. Autolycus was not above a little sharp practice in thievery, and he had been the cause of much trouble for many men. When Autolycus arrived in Ithaca, his infant grandson was placed in his lap. Euryclea, the child's nurse, asked Autolycus to name the boy, hinting that a pious name meaning a child much prayed for would be appropriate. But Autolycus had little use for piety. "Since I have been a man who has caused great distress to others," he said roguishly, "let the child be called Odysseus, which means that he will be a man of much trouble to himself and to his enemies." So the son of Laertes was named, and Autolycus's prediction of Odysseus's character and life was to prove quite accurate. Years later, when Odysseus had grown to be an adolescent, he went to visit his grandfather. Autolycus lived with his sons near Mount Parnassus on the Greek mainland. They all went out to hunt a huge boar which lived in the forest around the mountain. The boar was very fierce, and when the hunters approached, the animal charged. Odysseus was anxious to prove his bravery and skill, and so he leaped ahead of the others to meet the beast. The boar drove straight at Odysseus and inflicted a severe wound on his thigh. The gleaming tusk pierced deep into the flesh, but missed the bone. Before Odysseus fell, however, he struck the boar expertly with his spear, and the animal fell roaring to the dust. Autolycus and his son rushed forward, and while they bandaged the wounded leg, they admired and congratulated Odysseus on his valor and strength. The wound healed, and Odysseus returned to his home on Ithaca, but for the rest of his life he carried a great scar on his thigh. This scar would not simply be a token of Odysseus's first great deed. Later in his life, it would serve an important function as a mark of identification. That's foreshadowing. Odysseus grew up to be a splendid young man. Laertes, although he was still robust and active, recognized his son's extraordinary abilities and gave him the responsibility of running the kingdom. Odysseus became king of Ithaca, and although he was a young man, he quickly became known for his cleverness, his influence, his fluency, and his great ability to think while in danger. He was like nearly all the other kings of the Greek world, a brave and accomplished warrior. But his strength of mind and his capacity to come up with shrewd solutions to difficult problems were his most notable characteristics. While the other Greek heroes most often resorted to violence and sheer physical force to achieve their goals, Odysseus most often relied on his intelligence and on the cunning he had inherited from his grandfather. Once he became king, Odysseus decided to find a suitable woman to be his wife and queen. All the great kings of Greece had gathered at Lacedaemon to court Helen, the stepdaughter of King Tyndareus. Odysseus journeyed to Lacedaemon to join the men wooing Helen, even though he had little hope of success. Tyndareus was married to Leda, but Helen was not the daughter of their marriage. Zeus, the mightiest of all the Greek gods, was Helen's father. One day Zeus had seen Leda and fallen desperately in love with her beauty. Changing himself into a swan, Zeus raped Leda, and as a result, Helen was born. As we might expect from her having such a father, Helen grew up to be the loveliest woman in all the world. Because of her extraordinary beauty, all the kings of Greece wished to marry Helen. Tyndareus found himself in a difficult position. If he gave Helen to one man, all the other heroes and warrior kings would be angry with him, angry enough perhaps to attack his lands and destroy his property. So Tyndareus delayed making a decision, and the men courting Helen became more and more impatient. Finally, Odysseus called Tyndareus aside and offered him a solution. King Tyndareus, I think I have a plan that will put an end to your troubles. But first you must promise me something. If my plan succeeds, you must promise to use your influence to make your niece Penelope become my wife and the queen of Ithaca. Agreed? Agreed, replied Tyndareus. Then here is what you must do, said Odysseus. Each each of the men swear an oath. Each must swear to support and defend your choice of Helen's husband. This way you are out of danger, and all the kings will have sworn loyalty to the man you choose. Tyndareus was wise enough to recognize the sense of Odysseus's plan. Each of the gathered kings swore the oath, each hoping to be the man chosen. Once he had all the kings' oaths, Tyndareus gave Helen to Menelaus, the powerful and wealthy king of Sparta. Nor did Tyndareus forget his promise to Odysseus. When Odysseus returned to Ithaca, he brought Penelope with him as his wife. She was nearly as beautiful as Helen. She was also very talented and appropriately very clever. Some time passed during which the Greek world was generally at peace. An event occurred, however, which was to lead to a most disastrous war. Many famous heroes would die in battle, and one of the greatest cities of the ancient world would be utterly destroyed. Located on the northwest coast of Asia Minor was the city of Troy. The king of the Trojans was Priam, a wise and just ruler who had 50 sons. One of his sons was named Paris, a young man who was very handsome, but not very principled. In a sense, Paris's choice of history's first beauty contest was the cause of the Trojan War. Eris, the goddess of discord, was angered by not being invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. She made a golden apple, inscribed it with the message, "For the most beautiful," and rolled it into the room where the marriage feast was being celebrated. The three most powerful Olympian goddesses each felt she deserved the apple. They were Hera, Zeus's wife and goddess of marriage, Athena, Zeus's daughter and the goddess of wisdom, and Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Zeus was thus confronted with a very difficult decision. He knew that by giving the prize to one goddess, he would antagonize the other two. The gods and goddesses on Olympus were notorious squabblers. No matter what decision Zeus made, he was sure to suffer a breach in the peace of his household. So Zeus decided that the apple should be taken to Paris, who had won a reputation for being a fair judge, and that Paris should be instructed to make the award to the goddess of his choice. After each of the goddesses revealed herself to Paris, each trying to bribe him with promises of rewards, the Trojan prince awarded the golden apple to Aphrodite. Hera and Athena stormed off, outraged by the decision and vowing revenge on Paris and on his people. Aphrodite was properly satisfied and promised to help Paris win the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Shortly after this incident, which came to be known as the Judgment of Paris, Paris borrowed one of his father's ships and sailed across the Aegean Sea to visit King Menelaus of Sparta. Menelaus received Paris with great kindness and hospitality. Among the Greeks, all the notable upright men provided visitors with a generous welcome. Remember, that's called zinnia. For a month, Paris enjoyed feasts and entertainment at the splendid palace in Sparta. But when Menelaus left his city for several days, Paris committed an unforgivable crime. With the help of Aphrodite, Paris convinced Helen to elope with him to Troy. They loaded his ship with as much of Menelaus's gold as it would hold and set sail back across the Aegean Sea. When Menelaus returned to his palace, he discovered what Paris had done and immediately notified his older brother, Agamemnon, of what had happened to Helen. Agamemnon was king of Mycenae and was recognized as the greatest and most powerful of all the Greek kings. With Agamemnon's support, Menelaus called upon all those who had sworn to Tyndareus' oath to come to his aid and bring Helen back from Troy. From all over the Greek world, a mighty armada began to assemble at the island of Aulis. From Aetolia came King Diomedes, a valiant and powerful warrior. From the island of Crete came the glorious Idomeneus, leading many strong followers. From Pylos came Nestor, an aged king no longer able to fight, but famous for his wisdom and good advice. From Euboea came Prince Palamedes, a man well experienced in the practice of war. All those who had sworn allegiance to Menelaus brought their armies on board ship to the island of Aulis. All except one. Odysseus did not immediately answer the call to arms. Penelope had just recently borne him a son, who was named Telemachus, and Odysseus was reluctant to leave his beloved island and his new family. In addition, the prophet Halitherses warned Odysseus that if he went to fight at Troy, he would not return for 20 years. The chieftains who had gathered at Aulis realized that they needed Odysseus, Odysseus' assistance if their expedition was to succeed. The city of Troy was quite powerful and with walls that were said to be impregnable, and the Trojans were fierce and accomplished warriors. The Greeks needed all the strength they could muster. Agamemnon sent a legation to Ithaca, led by Menelaus and Palamedes. When Odysseus learned that the two kings had landed on the island, he planned to trick them. By pretending to be insane, Odysseus hoped that he could avoid having to join the expedition to Troy. Odysseus is a trickster character in this epic. Menelaus and Palamedes arrived at the palace and discovered that Odysseus was out in the fields. He had yoked an ox and an ass together and was plowing the field and sowing the furrows with salt, something only a madman would do. Palamedes was well aware of Odysseus's cleverness and was not convinced that Odysseus was truly insane. So Palamedes grabbed the infant Telemachus and placed the baby in front of the plow. When Odysseus stopped the plow to save his son, Palamedes and Menelaus knew that he had his wits about him and was not in fact mad. They called upon Odysseus to fulfill his pledge and join the Greek forces. Okay, I will pause there and continue on the next video. I hope you are enjoying the reading. Bye-bye.